Welcome back to the channel, everybody. We're seeing now they're coming out talking about the problems in Europe as we've been covering here. Now they're coming out and talking about the problems in China as we've been covering. We're on the right path. All the solutions that they require come from the new financial system. And it's why we're hearing so much about different things going on in the new financial system. Now, this first article, and we have two potent ones today, is about JP Morgan. JP Morgan CEO Jamie Dimon says Europe has a real problem, and he did not hold back. Of course, he can't elaborate as deeply as we do on this channel, but we know what he's talking about. Let's read this little tidbit here, and then I'll give you my thoughts, right? It says here, JP Morgan Chief Executive Officer Jamie Dimon called out slow bureaucracy in Europe in a warning that a, quote, weak continent, what does he mean by that? Weak continent? In what way? Weak continent poses a major economic risk to the U.S. Is that, you don't say? I mean, you're using a little bit of dichotomy there, Mr. Dimon, to try to provoke Europe to move faster. Here's the problem. Firstly, let's knock this out. What are the problems Europe is having? Well, they've told you themselves. Increased fragmentation. Their financial system they've got some major problems, more than most. Their financial system has severe problems, okay? That's number one. We know that the new financial system helps them with liquidity, but they have a fragmentation problem. It helps with that. It glues everything together. But what else? What else is it that they talk about frequently that could help Europe? Well, one thing they're complaining about when he says they have a weak continent is lagging productivity. Oh, you don't see where that's going? Folks, have I not been talking about? And see, every executive knows this, what I've been speaking about. Every business person knows this. Lagging productivity is solved by the new financial system by way of full automation. You see it happen. They're testing out little bits of it here and there already. They will use smart contracts. That's why they've been going how can I phrase it appropriately? They've been talking about it a lot. That's a little bit of a boring way to put it, but it's true. They've been talking about smart contracts a lot. And then what happened? Remember years ago, I would say it would be smart contracts in combination with AI. And that's exactly what they're talking about right now. Between AI and smart contracts, with both of them, you get with the new financial system, especially on chains like XRPL, right? You got two entities in Japan building AI on XRPL, and you know the whole smart contract thing, whether it's native or otherwise, you have that. They're cultivating it this way for world domination. If you have full automation, all that's required after that, after you master that, is willpower. So it doesn't matter if you're in Europe. It doesn't matter if you're in the US, China, Japan. It makes no difference. If you have the will and you're willing to, to put in the time and effort, that full automation for the first few years and the first people to get in, because those prices are going to skyrocket on certain offerings, especially AI. I'm particularly talking about AI or any iteration of a new financial system offering that the legacy system layers something of theirs on top of, because we all know the legacy system loves fees. That's why I'm saying the first year or two, that's where these businesses, this is not advice, not financial advice, that's where they need to get in. And that's what's expected. They're expecting trillions of dollars to come to chain because of that alone. Business is needed. It's been tough out here globally for businesses, especially if you want to expand rapidly and you don't want to just, don't get me wrong. I understand taking years and years to build over time. I understand that, but most people and most entities do not want that. They want it in the next few months to be successful. That is to expand, with less effort, That's massive. That's why you have all the private, the upgrades in privacy, the upgrades in security. I mean, all this talk about smart contracts, that's not for retail. That's for businesses, banks, etc. Lagging. So this is what it says. Lagging productivity. Many European economies, don't worry, we're going to get to China. Holy smokes, the second article is probably more potent than the first. If you like this type of content, the power is yours. Take those powerful hands and hit that like button. Many European economies struggle with lower productivity growth rates, which slows down overall GDP expansion. I mean, you can take full automation and extrapolate that into a multitude of different things and ways. And it all leads to one continuous truth. I mean, it's continuous where you find this throughout, no matter where you start your research, it leads to this. Trillions of dollars or whatever currency you want to put it in coming to chain. And then one must ask themselves a question. If this is inevitable, how does that affect the prices of these native tokens that run everything? It's a good question, in my humble opinion. So lagging productivity. Then I told you about the fragmentation. They speak about that also. It says, unlike the unified US market, the European Union EU market remains fragmented, which it's not just in this way, but they've been talking about that for months and months, whether it's the European Central Bank, European Union representatives. We've read a lot of different things, have we not? I believe we have. Folks, the new financial system pulls it all together. Remember, I told you they always had this dream of, what did they title it? It was controversial. Like this one world system. They always wanted it. They couldn't have it. The people weren't going for that, right? So now they're at the point, I'm just telling it how I see it. They're at the point now where they have to settle. They have to make a decision. Do they abandon these old thoughts? They have to. There's with all this geopolitical tension and fragmentation, they're not on one page. Too many different people want to sit on the throne. So that one world stuff is never going to happen. So now they have to make a decision. Do they move on? It seems that they're going to have to. They have to move on to a neutral system that glues everything together. They can settle on having a bunch of value, whatever they're going to do with that, whatever that means. And then you proceed from there. But that's where they're at right now. That's why there's all this battling back and forth. And you see, as I said in the video yesterday, I hope people saw that video. Eloquent or not, that information is potent. And I believe I have another article here with about the U.S. Treasury Secretary speaking again or backing something again. You don't see just out of nowhere the U.S. Treasury becoming very vocal and visual. Why? Out of nowhere. Why? I'm telling you, pay attention to them. They're part of the setup for the new financial system. So I just wanted to point that out. As an example, there's this big war going on in the financial system between powers, Fed, U.S. Treasury, ECB, within different against different elements within the European Union, European financial system. The UK, they don't even hide it. The Bank of England just makes it clear, like, listen, we know there's problems here. We're just going to do our best. And they're working with Quant and Ripple, but you have to pay close attention to that because it's part of the setup and explains why these things are happening and why those prices can skyrocket if you believe such a thing. I only speak for myself. I know what I see, not financial advice. So fragmentation, they speak on it. Unlike the unified U.S. market, the European Union market remains fragmented. And that's not all. I don't know why they always pull. You notice how they baby these people? The large asset managers, the financial system, and the bank, they fear the banks. So it's like everybody tiptoes around the banks. I get it. The banks they'll take action against you for sure. They feel like you're pushing a little too hard. I get it. But listen, if you're going to go all the way. Don't be a coward. That's how I feel. No disrespect. But everybody touches on this with a light hand. I'm not going to. It's just my way. Now, as a researcher, all due respect, I got to call it how it is. But listen to how they put it. It remains fragmented. Why don't you say there's increased fragmentation? I mean, Christine Lagarde, her leader of the ECB is telling people there's increased fragmentation. That's important to understand. Why? Because when you have a company like Ripple proliferating rapidly through Europe, do a little Google search on Ripple's connections in Europe. Let that blow your mind and just understand, right? Have the understanding. You don't have to, but I would say have the understanding that that's the superficial. That's not even the depth of what's really going on that we don't see. There's always what you see and what you don't see. And ask yourself, after you see all that superficiality that's going on, they made this deal, that deal, they're part of this panel and they're trying to help other companies get involved in Europe. Right. Because there's just no financial incentive for that for Ripple. Get out of here. Stop. Of course there is. Of course. All right. So fragmentation. So it will explain why they're there so deep. And they're certain they can take Europe. Why so many bank coins are deep in Europe. You got Ripple over there. You have Quant deep. Shh, nobody talks about that anymore, huh? Even though Quant has a super low circulating supply, but nobody talks about Quant anymore, even though they continue their work and alter their system to make themselves so delicious for financial institutions. But we'll come back to that another time. But that's what I've seen. You don't have to agree. Now, man, there's so many things going on. Okay. It continues, particularly in services and capital markets. This prevents businesses from achieving the scale and efficiency seen in the U.S. Didn't I tell you? I told you. What solves this problem easily in a few years' time? If it's applied correctly, that is. Full automation. Now, with full automation, you get smart contracts, XRPL. Or anyway, Hedera, you have great smart contracts. Algorand, they're deep over there also. Type in Algorand and Italian financial system, or Algorand insurance companies, Algorand banks in Italy, something like that. I'm just giving you little sprinkles on an already delicious cake if you want to look up some stuff. So anyway, where was I? Ripple, XRP, Hedera, smart contracts. There's so many great ones you could choose from, but the XRPL, they're taking that serious. But why? Because a few months back, how many documents? 1, 2, was it 3? You remember the banks put out, and they were talking about not only the banks, some banks and some large financial institutions. Have you been reading all those documents? Which, by the way, don't forget, check those posts. Members only section. I put some more out last night, I believe. Have you been reading those financial institution documents when they were talking about smart contracts and how they desire them? And then all of a sudden, there's this big push from Ripple. Oh, we got to step up security with smart contracts and AI. And you got David Schwartz, who's consistently coming out now speaking about, different things he's doing with the XRPL and testing. And I read that last response. You really believe that? Now, a person can tell you the truth without telling you the entire truth. All right. And some people are satiated with a partial truth. There was nothing untrue about what he said. But as I'm reading and I'm saying to myself, there must be more to incentivize such. You said you were stepping back, but you're actually stepping forward. Especially being vocal. What's the catalyst? What's the cause of that? You don't find that suspicious? My job is to ask questions. As researchers, we have to ask questions so we can find things that no one else has discovered. We're like adventurers exploring the jungles of the world when the world was still young, or if people perceive it that way, right? That's what we are. Our vehicle for getting to discoveries is our questions. So I ask once more, you believe that's all that what David Schwartz is doing with all this testing and everything he's doing is just merely superficial? I would have to respectfully disagree, folks. Respectfully. No, they're doing all this work. You had Reese Merritt coming out. You've had the President Monica Long come out recently. You've had David Schwartz come out. Brad Garlinghouse, does he even sleep? This guy's all over the place in the last few months. Why? Why is that? You think that's for nothing? You have to, maybe it's a little bit more difficult to say about entities, but entities, businesses, etc., whatever nomenclature you want to apply to them, although sometimes their patterns can be quite unpredictable, they're led by individuals whose patterns are quite predictable. Many people like to exist based on a continuity. They develop habits. They have a habit energy. Okay, well, let's look at people's habit energy. Let's look at David Schwartz's habit energy. Let's look at Brad Garlinghouse's habit energy. What does it tell you? Every single time you see all this activity happening, Boom, they do this. Boom, they do that. Boom, they do this. Boom, they do that. At Ripple, what happens? A few months later, there's big announcements. Yes, every single time you see all this activity, then I'm repeating it for impact to make it clear. I want that to really, really saturate minds. A few months later, there's always these big announcements. So, I mean, could we go out on a limb and say that that's possibly their habit energy? So if they're doing all this now, maybe there's something big at work. I would think. You don't think they advance? Oh, we have all these banks. We didn't even name some of them. I'm paraphrasing heavily. You don't think work has continued with them? Expansion? Didn't we just read an article? Who was it? Was it Reese Merrick or was it Monica Long? One of the two came out and was talking about these things that they're doing in a particular place, whether it was Africa or Europe. And they said, we're trying to expand. Elaborate on that. Why didn't they elaborate on that? You think it's superficial? They're playing for the big game, folks. You don't see how the old legacy system is burning to the ground? They know those trillions are for the taking. You think this is a game? This is not a game. Although we have fun from time to time, I just make it interesting because I know life is not going to bring you something good. You have to make your own good. Life is not going to hand you fun. You have to make your own fun. I'm just a way maker. That's how I do for myself. I'm not saying for you or anybody else. I make a way for myself. So we have fun from time to time. That doesn't mean that this is a game. No, it's not. Trillions on the line. You got a war going on in the legacy system. The legacy system's going down. Their trust is at an all-time low. They're losing transactions here and there. Oh, you don't know about that? Look that up. You think people want to lose millions of dollars? That's a fact. They're losing transactions. The liquidity, they didn't know what they were doing for decades when it came to liquidity. Hence why there's a liquidity problem right now. And certain legacy system actors are taking advantage of that. Hence why some of the banks are like, you know what? We're going to go towards this new financial system. We have to survive despite their egos and the egos of the Fed, U.S. Treasury, ECB, whatever. We have to survive as a business. You know, whatever system's going to run it, we want to be here. So they're all shifting over to the new financial system. That's going to bring the liquidity, the lending, the staking. They're going to pour capital into that. I almost gave something away. I don't want to, though. I almost gave something away. There's something massive that I discussed in a members only video. I'm just telling you facts. You don't have to go to the members only videos. I'm just telling you that there was something massive in there. And someone, how could I say it without giving away too much? In a particular system says something very impactful that's eye-opening. All right, now, I want to go to this China information. So that's Europe. The XRPL and the new financial system, in my humble opinion, I don't have a timeline. That's up to you to work that out. And I don't know these companies. I'm just telling you my opinion based on the research that I'm doing. It looks like Europe is going to be dominated. There's no way around it. There's no way around it. They're going to be dominated. They're going to hand over those trillions. All right. Let's continue on here to a little bit of China news. All of this is intertwined. You see how Jamie Dimon said, well, what they do over there, it'll have a negative effect on the U.S. Why did he say that? Haven't I been telling you all these systems are intertwined? And it's not just, the West, they're intertwined because they're allies. No. The West is entangled within the West, and the West is entangled with the East is entangled within the East, and the East is entangled within the West. It's a global thing is what I'm trying to convey. I did that in an overly complicated way. I shouldn't have, but that's the way it came out. They're all tied together. I'm going to give this one away. Did you see the document? After months of myself proclaiming such, did you see the document that came out from a major institution that was talking about how if there are certain contagions within the banking system, banks go down, or if non-banking financial institutions go down in certain regions, there will be a global domino effect. And did you see all the connections? Folks, if that happens, one must realize gold would skyrocket. XRP over time, it may be even in immediacy, would skyrocket. Bitcoin would definitely skyrocket. The big three. All for different reasons. But it's not like, before I get onto the China article, it's not as if, and I told you this, didn't I say this? When all the other, those article writers were coming out and they were saying, well, they're going to slow down on buying gold. Did they slow down? And I told you, I don't believe that. I don't believe it. We've been following central banks buying of gold for almost 3 years now. I'm not saying that's how long I've been doing the channel. I'm saying that's how long we've been following what they're doing with gold, to make it clear. Some people misconstrue things. They hear things the way they want to hear it. I've seen that a lot. That's why I have to address that. And based on the habits we've seen, there's been nothing but a continuity of buying gold or an increase. And don't get me wrong. Sure, and sometimes some of these article writers are like, well, they were selling of gold. Yeah, sure. They're going to sell gold here and there. But if you're selling one, I'm just going to throw a number out there. It's not a real number obviously, but I'm just to make an example, you sell 1 bar of gold and you buy 50,000. What difference does it make you sold one? But that's the game that they play in some of these articles, because fear sells. Fear is going to get you big clicks and views. Panic is going to get you big clicks and views. So they use that, but that's not entirely accurate. Sure, they sold 1 bar, they bought 50,000, which means what? If you were to chart that, there's an incremental increase over certain periods of time, or a continuity you'll see of them purchasing gold. I'm talking about the central banks. What are they protecting themselves from? Gold is a protective asset. Central banks protecting themselves. Non-banking financial institutions protecting themselves. A lot of high value individuals, even though they got in late. Let's just be clear about that. 4 years ago, almost none of these so-called high value individuals were into gold heavily. Then like 2 years into the channel or so, then people started to buy a lot of gold. But that's because of, well, for what reason? Why? Because their researchers that they pay were coming to them and telling them about the problems in the financial system. They said, whoa, I worked too hard to lose this value. I need to protect some of it. And so a lot of them went heavily into gold. There's a problem in the financial system, and no one knows when it might rear its ugly head and to what degree. They just know that there's a severity there. So then we get to articles like this: China's risky shadow banks back in the spotlight after Beijing's debt crackdown. Folks, do you believe, honestly, that Ripple didn't know China was in trouble when they did all those deals in China? When they made the CBDC platform in China? When they sat on that stage and Brad Garlinghouse was shaking hands with and making connections with the leaders in China's financial system? Remember that? That wasn't too long ago. And that was when that individual who was representing China's financial system, they asked him about volatility. He said, nah, we're not worried about that. Really? I always found that fascinating that he was so bold to say that. And yet people just wrote that off. They just buried it. But do you believe that Ripple didn't know of these problems within China's financial system? I've went over that extensively in the members only section within the last 7 videos. They're there positioned strategically to take advantage. China, almost more than anyone, needs bridge currencies. China needs liquidity. China needs traceability, a neutral traceability, because they do business globally. Massive business. We all know this. Their products they sell here and there. Partnerships that need to be honored. Maybe, they don't trust the human eye. They need AI to look over it. Maybe human element and AI. I don't know. Smart contracts as well. China is also extremely advanced in what they do as well. So I do expect them to go 100% full automation earlier than everybody else. Why do I say that? And I say that because I know for a fact, well, if the articles are true, China was trying out robotics in hospitals like a year and a half, 2 years ago. Real robots, not like the ones in the US look like R2-D2. No, these are humanoid robots. They were testing out in hospitals. At least that's what the article said. This is back when I used to cover robotics heavily. So that was then. Imagine what they've done now, right? So that's why justifies my thoughts that they're going to go heavy with full automation, smart contracts, especially in Hong Kong. Understand Hong Kong does its own thing. In Hong Kong and mainland China, one China, yes, one China, but they have two completely different financial systems, right? What you saw with the activity that happened on the XRPL with the whole, they had like a EHKD stablecoin or something was pegged to it or something like that. Recently, Ripple knows their corridors were strategically placed years ago to take advantage of the global system, global financial system, global legacy financial systems downfall. My question once more, if all of this does occur the way it appears to be playing out, what does it do to that price? Their shadow banks, and I said this about other places as well, and I showed proof. I showed article clippings. A lot of the ones we've been covering come from the Fed and come from professional institutions. Isn't that interesting? U.S. Treasury, et cetera, right? I let them tell on themselves. If people just look hard enough, they give you the information, right? That's always fascinating to me. But there's so much intertwining between the non-banking financial institutions, whether they're in the U.S. or China, and their legacy banking system. There is really no difference. The banks are wearing NBFIs, or when they don't like them and they want to talk about them in the media, shadow banks, the word they use. Sounds so frightening, right? Well, not to me, but that's how they intend it. Shadow banks, right? Knowing very well. That's a good way to paint somebody negatively, an entity negatively, right? Knowing that everyone who grew up in the 70s, 80s, 90s, and maybe even early 2000s, there was always some enemy that was like the shadow gang or shadow clan or something, like, you know how that used to be with villains in movies. So that conditioning is theirs, and then they chain that onto the NBFIs to point the finger at them. Anytime people hear shadow banks, they're like, ooh, that must be bad. And it's like, well, who's funding them? Who provides the liquidity backstops for them as well? If the shadow banks go down, banks will also go down. Wait. Hence why the banks always complain about the shadow banks, right? And this, these activities that they don't agree with. They're intertwined. You have to know this to know the system, and when there may be bank runs, if there's bank runs going to occur. Why? Who to watch? Is it only the banks? No. For gold and bank coin holders, as well as Bitcoin holders, I'm going to include them as well. This setup is beautiful. It's just a matter of when, and that's up to you once more to come up with. I don't have a timeline, folks. I'm knee deep in the research, and I'm just going to keep it coming. I'm solving the mystery. I'm on this case, and I enjoy it, but I'm knee deep in it. I'll leave the timelines up to you. But this is what it says here. Bear with me one moment. The system is now back in the spotlight after Xi Jinping's administration intensified efforts to address the hidden debt of local government financing vehicles, LGFVs. LGFVs are state-owned enterprises created by local governments to finance infrastructure and property projects. Right. Off the government's official balance sheet. Folks, oh my word. There's so many. There's no way they can solve this. I'm not talking about China. This problem is not just China's problem, okay? Once more, the same problems. Of course, everything varies in degrees. They're not exactly the same, but in degree. They're not the same in degree, but the problems are pretty similar, whether it's China, the US, Europe, right? Even Japan. This is a hence why you heard, Japan's doing the stimulus thing. You heard China talking about stimulus things. You have the U.S. talking about certain things. It's the difference between what they're talking about and stimulus. What's the difference, right? Oh, my word. Listen. I'm just glad we're on the right path. And so they're discussing the things that we were talking about for weeks now. Now they're discussing it. We forced their hand. You feel like that? You're like, man, no, don't be. Listen, you'd be surprised who comes across this content that you help put out there to the world, this information. When you click that like button stuff, you're helping to put that information out there for minds that may not have seen it. So you'd be surprised. A lot of these entities, they see this, and you're like, how do you know that? Every person who makes videos, they're going to get reached out to. I'm just going to leave it at that. You're making videos. I know you got reached out to, but let's say you didn't yet. You're going to. If you're covering this kind of content, yes, you are. You're going to get reached out to. By who, Mick? Come on now. You'll trust me. You're going to know. They're going to make it very clear. So that's how we. All right, let's go to a little bit of Bitcoin news, folks. I hope you're having a good day. All right. All right, we make our own goodness. We'll make some jokes, have some good, listen to some good music or something. Watch some funny videos, generate a good energy. I hope you had a good day in some possible way. All right, make your own light if there is none. All right, so that's how I feel. You don't have to do anything. It's not advice. All right, so now let's go here. Little bit of the Bitcoin. All right, so this article is titled Bitcoin News Today, Institutional Flows Improve, but analysts warn of a pullback. Why not let the people just enjoy what's going on? I suppose one could be like, they're being balanced, Mick. I suppose, but you're kicking the people while they're down. The people know that there's a possibility of pullback. There's always possibility of selling. I don't even see that as being news. There's always that possibility. But why not also highlight the positive catalysts that are going on right now? You're like, well, Mick, you might say to yourself, well, Mick, you said the institutional flows improve, but why negate that? Why not just let that stand? Let that stand for a moment. Let the people feel good for a moment. Too much pessimism in the world. That's just my opinion. You don't have to agree. I'm fine with that. It says here, recent news indicates mixed signals for Bitcoin with some improvement in institutional inflows. Well, let's take those mixed signals. So you got the positive and negative, but take those positive signals and then also pair it with the positive catalyst. Nations want Bitcoin, countries want Bitcoin, large asset managers want Bitcoin, central banks now want Bitcoin. We know that's a fact. We already had one already step in and test it out. When you pair it with that, Bitcoin has a very bullish outlook, despite any pullback, consolidation, or otherwise. Long term, it's super bullish. Why not say that? It's because at this particular time when it's like there's sort of, and I mean absolutely no disrespect, it's just my observation, there is this collective mentality. When everyone says this, you don't want to be, a lot of people don't want to be the uncool kid on the block, right? And so they just start parroting what everyone else is saying so they can fit in. That mentality pervades even adults. I don't have to say even adults. Pervades adults. I'm trying to eliminate useless wording, but I'm working on it. I'm always improving. I observe myself. I correct myself, and I'm trying to improve every day. But it takes a brave person to step out of that collective mentality and say, no, I'm just going to say what I think. I'm going to be myself. That takes bravery. And so I just see this as everyone is a negative energy right now. And they're profiting off of that. They're jumping in. They don't want to go against the grain because they'll get attacked. You know what I mean? But it's whatever, I'm not worried about that. Bitcoin remains super bullish. Simple as that. Look at the catalyst. You can't negate the facts. Let's talk about facts. I'm not talking short term, and I'm not a perma bull either. I like to call myself, I'm semi-permanent. I'm still like, I'm not permanent. I'm just long term, but not the longest of terms. That makes sense. All right. So it continues on, folks. It says after a record monthly outflow of nearly $3.79 billion. See, we know this. So then why do they have to always, they want to massage our minds with this negativity. It's like, I don't know. You ever feel like listen, take it how you want it. You ever feel like negative energy is like parasitic? People can't just keep it to themselves. They got to spread it around a little bit. You ever feel like that? Am I wrong? Tell me I'm wrong. You don't feel like that? I stay away from that. It's not about weakness. It's about being smart. You don't have to, if you don't have to walk into a lion's cage, then don't. Right? You'll live a little bit longer. If you don't have to walk into negativity, don't. You'll live longer. Same thing. Stress kills. So, yeah, they always have to massage your mind with this negative. Well, outflows. We already know that. Okay, tell me what's going on right now that was positive. Why can't you just do that? Do it. That's what's real strength. Do it. Be positive. Do it. When everybody else is negative, be positive. That's real strength. If you're just doing everything everyone else does, that's not strength. That's easy. How is it strong to do what everyone else does and prove that anyone could do it? That's not strength. Strength is doing what others can't do. Facts. Positivity is rare. That's strength to do it then. Because everybody else is negative. That's easy to do. That's not strength. Learning and growing is rare, which means it takes strength to do that because not everyone else is doing it. Guess what everyone else is doing? Was easy, not growing, not learning, not self-observing, not self-correcting. In my humble opinion, you don't have to agree. You don't have to agree, but I'm leaving it all on the table. As I'm leaving it all on the table. I'm not going into any ground. I'm not leaving this life on my last day thinking I didn't do certain things. I didn't say certain things. I didn't push. I didn't leave an impact in my own way. Whether people like it or not, or say you left it. It's not about what they say. Your life is not defined by what they say. In those last moments, I hope you're not thinking. And I think like this all the time. I'm just sharing my mentality. You don't have to think like this. I don't want to be thinking to myself, oh, what about these other people? And what do they think about? No. It's just like before I lay down and go to sleep, I say to myself, did I do my best today? Yes, I did. Yes, I did. Did I give the best of me despite all the pressures of the world? Yes, I did. Only you could tell yourself that. So here we go. So be different. You don't have to. It's not advice. I'm just saying. What do you want to be? In a field of green grass. Everybody's the green grass. You don't want to be a colorful flower, different. That's interesting. With a one-day inflow of $58.5 million into Bitcoin funds, this suggests a cautious return of institutional interest, but sentiment remains fragile. All right. Listen, we're going to leave it at that. Inflow of 58.5 million. Listen, people don't understand what's coming for Bitcoin. I don't need them to understand. I'm just a humble researcher. But I'm super bullish on Bitcoin, Bankcoins, and gold. And you know my reasons why. So now that you have that information, what are you going to do with it? I know what I'm going to do with it. So until next time, all you good people out there, you know I appreciate you. Let's get to the money.